Sir Anand Satyanand, who has a number of connections with what is involved with our lives in Wellington. In a personal capacity, Sir Anand and his wife, Lady Susan, are friends of a number of those present here this evening, including with the President of the Wellington Indian Association, Nanubai Ranchod, and his wife, Pamela, and the High Commissioner of India to New Zealand, His Excellency Mr. Sanjeev Kohli, and his wife, Mrs. Ruma Kohli. Sir Anand's background is connected to these events by his 4 grandparents being Girmitia migrants to Fiji, and his parents later coming on to migrate and live in New Zealand. In public life, Sir Anand is today chairing a Royal Commission into Historic Abuse of People in Care. He has been in previous phases, either in Auckland or Wellington, a lawyer, a judge, and ombudsman. He also served as New Zealand's 19th Governor-General from 2006 until 2011. He has had the privilege of being knighted in New Zealand and receiving a Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award in India. It is now my pleasure to invite the Right Honourable Sir Anand Satyanand to please come on stage and deliver the keynote address.
MC Mamta Bhatt, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. New Delhi in India is a quarter of the way around the world from Wellington in New Zealand. One country, India, is among the larger, and the other, New Zealand, among the smaller countries in the world. Yet, in the 21st century, there are many links between the two. The links are borne by people, travellers, migrants, and functionaries of diplomacy, trade, and business. Both countries are long-term members of the Commonwealth, with similar approaches to governance, democracy, commercial practice, and the rule of law. There is even talk in the media in very recent days of a direct air link between the main cities of the two countries. As a New Zealander whose 4 grandparents were born and lived the first part of their lives in India more than 100 years ago, it is a distinct privilege to be asked to prepare and deliver an address celebrating the 150th anniversary of the birth date of Mahatma Gandhi, a man whose life in India shaped hugely important changes, not only in that country, but in many parts of the world. That an invitation should have been a joint request from the Indian High Commissioner to New Zealand, His Excellency Sanjeev Kohli, and the President of the Wellington Indian Association, Nanubai Ranchod, makes it for me something very special because of the firm friendship I have with both. The revered person whose time of birth we commemorate this evening, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, lived for 80 years, most of that in the 20th century, and most of that in India. This person of humble origin, born in Porbandar in coastal Gujarat in 1869, brought to an end 300 years of British colonial rule over more than 300 million people, whilst on a pathway that never wavered from non-violent non-cooperation. In my personal lifetime, I've had the privilege of travelling with my wife Susan and seeing inside the ashram of Gandhiji and his wife Kasturba at Sabarmati near Ahmedabad in Gujarat. We have also been to the Mani Bhavan in Laburnum Marg near Chowpatty Beach in Mumbai, from where Gandhiji perfected the strategy of Satyagraha, the force of truth. I've also witnessed the special aura and grandeur of the Rajghat Gandhi Memorial in New Delhi. Those three experiences have reinforced my sense of wonder at the achievements of the simple, humble, and profound man who came to be known as the Mahatma. Many thousands of accounts of his life and exploits have been rendered in print and sound and on film and television. I want in my remarks to focus on three things which to my mind best characterize his life and offer for us a model or standard to emulate. The first of these is engagement. He never ceased his close involvement with those about him, when a life devoted to prayer and asceticism could easily have pushed him into the margins. Although opposed to warfare, he mobilized people of Indian origin in Natal during the Boer War in 1906 to form an ambulance corps for use by the British as stretcher bearers, with expenses to be met by the local Indian community. Then after he returned in 1915 to India as the first Pravasi, he became criticized and humiliated and even despised by the colonial government due to activities such as promoting the boycott of English-made cotton goods. Gandhi went to England in 1931 to represent the Indian National Congress in talks with the British government about India being granted the right to self-rule. Whilst there, he engaged directly with not only the political heads in Whitehall, but also mill workers in British cotton factories. Later, when there was dissension among Indian groups as independence approached, time and again he was there in person to counsel and persuade and argue when he could easily have withdrawn. The first lesson to be advanced in regard to Mahatma Gandhiji is this matter of engagement. The second item of the three we should emulate is education. And Gandhi's lifelong espousal of the advantages of seeking out opportunities for improvement and learning. He himself had gone from India at the end of the 19th century to study and gain qualification as a lawyer in England. I love the anecdote of Gandhiji meeting a young Englishman who had said that he wanted to go to India as a Christian missionary and to help people by teaching. The guidance he received from Gandhi was, go out, not just to teach, but to learn. The third principle for which Gandhi modelled us for is equality. To reflect that his influence reached much further than that of achieving Indian independence, in which, incidentally, he played no official part. More broadly than the independence struggle, Gandhi saw many things in the Indian way of life that needed change. He was tireless in his advocacy for civil rights of women, for the abolition of the caste system, and for fair treatment of all people, regardless of their religion or background. He championed positive changes in attitudes towards people practicing the Muslim faith and towards untouchables that make him stand out as a human being in the fullest sense. Gandhi's legacy involves demonstrating how these three elements, engagement, education, and equality, can be used to great effect. And this has inspired people to adopt them in other seemingly intransigent settings. Years later, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in the United States and Madiba Nelson Mandela in South Africa both effected leadership, emphasizing non-violent, non-cooperation as a positive force. Gandhi himself may have been inspired by other actions, this time closer to Aotearoa, New Zealand. Several accounts confirm that Gandhi read reports of the actions of Te Whiti o Rongomai, the Maori leader of Parihaka in the Taranaki on the North Island west coast. Some 15 years before Mahatma Gandhi's first steps in active non-violence were taken in South Africa, Te Whiti and his close relation Tohu Kakahi mobilised people against confiscation of Maori land by the government. They employed passive resistance, for example by ploughing the land to prevent the building of roads and removing survey pegs and things of that order. Eventually, legislation was used to arrest and detain Te Whiti and others without trial. But reports of the Maori ploughing tactics in 1880 and 1881 and mass submission to arrest reached and influenced the thinking a decade or so later of a young lawyer considering non-violent action against practices of the government in South Africa. I end by asking a question about what we can all derive from Gandhi's life that might be relevant 150 years after the birth date we celebrate and 70 years after he died by assassination. In the succeeding years, politics and telecommunications and computers have made us live our lives in different ways and at a pace far removed from the simplicity of one who wore the homespun khadi cloth and who was symbolized by spectacles, sandals, and a spinning wheel. May I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that there is an answer coming from something Gandhiji himself said that reflected his own circumstance and which, on reflection, may I say, still works for all of us today, wherever we may be in the world. Gandhi once said, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. And I offer that statement, live as if you were to die tomorrow, which is, after all, about engagement in a contemporary challenge to us all. Thank you for your kind and courteous attention.
Thank you, Sir Anand, for your time and for taking us through the life and journey of Mahatma Gandhi.